On today's podcast, we have the pleasure of speaking with one of the great music industry executives, the one and only Phil Quadraro. He's an executive who has seen the business evolve profoundly over the last 40 years. Phil, if you don't know, was the president of Virgin Records for 11 years, as well as the president of Warner Brothers Records for 5 years, and he ran EMI North America for 5 years as well. He's just joined a brand new music company called the Hello Group as their new CEO. We discuss how he's bringing his 40 years to this new venture, how the criteria for artists connecting with an audience has shifted and why, and how there's so many more moving parts and touch points for an artist to connect with an audience, how artists need a viable foundation for their music to get labels' attention, and much, much more. This is one conversation you definitely don't want to miss. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're with Phil Quadraro, CEO of the Hello Group, a new entertainment music company, where we discuss how the criteria for artists connecting with an audience has shifted and why, as well as how artists need a viable foundation for their music to get a label's attention today. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Insiders. Are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured interview is with the legendary Phil Quadraro. Phil is one of those amazing executives who has been in the business for over 40 years. He was the president of Virgin Records for over 11 years. He was president of Warner Brothers Records, and he ran EMI North America for 5 years. He's now the CEO of a new company called the Hello Group, and we got into a lot of interesting aspects. He has a real understanding of what the business was, but more importantly, what the business is today and what you need to succeed in it as an artist today. And he gave a lot of insight into those areas.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Rich. You kind of stole my thunder on that. But yes, he's coming from that old paradigm into the new paradigm. And it's actually just a testament of how great he is to be able to come from that old paradigm and have success in this current one.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And he really gives an insight as to why certain factors are so important for artists to know and to learn about today if they want to have a career in this business.
Insiders, this is one you're going to want to check out. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Phil Quadraro.
Phil, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You know, I always like to start our conversations with a question to everybody, especially with people who have been in the business for a long time, which is, when in your life did you know that the music business was going to be your professional career path?
When I was 7 years old, sitting on the floor on a Sunday night in Long Island, New York, watching a black and white TV with my family, and I saw the Beatles come down the steps for the Ed Sullivan Show.
Wow.
And I turned to my dad and I said, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to find a way to be part of it. And he looked over the top of the newspaper and he said, okay.
Wow. Okay. Great.
Phil, this is Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor to have you. You're now president and CEO of a dynamic new media company called the Hello Group. Can you tell us a little bit about the company and what they do and why you joined them?
Yes. I was managing some singer-songwriters about 5 years ago, and I met up with a gentleman named Taylor Jones who at the time was a young 23-year-old kid from England, and I was surprised to find out he had already been in the business 7 or 8 years as an artist and as a manager and as a producer and as a writer, and I was so impressed with him. And like it is so many times, you connect with people, and we were finishing each other's sentences and laughing. We met over a singer-songwriter. We ended up getting into business with that singer-songwriter, and in fact, we ended up placing one of her songs into one of the very first big BTS records. And that was the beginning. He was looking to come to America to grow his business. And, you know, he at the time was running an influencer agency. And I, of course, at my age and my part of my career, I didn't have a lot of interest in the influencer business, but he wanted to come to America. And I knew that he had the youth and he had the view of the current youth world that I don't have, nor could I have. And I had the 40 years of experience and knowledge that it would take him 40 years to learn.
Right.
So the fact that we could complement one another's skills, but more importantly, that we enjoyed each other and we cared about each other, and we went off on this path together to do business was very, very exciting and very good.
Phil, you've had such an extensive background in the music business. You've run some of the biggest labels of our business. You were CEO of Virgin. You were CEO of Warner Brothers. You ran EMI North America. It's such a different business today. How has your experience in the industry evolved from what you've learned to running a new company like the Hello Group?
Well, the common denominator, of course, is the composer and the compositions. At the end of the day, all of our business is a life support system for artists and the songs they create. So I never left the artist business, and I never left the song business. So it comes in different shapes and colors and flavors, but at the end of the day, you're still dealing with a song and you're still dealing with an artist.
Phil, in the past, marketing music artists was more oriented towards the music exclusively. Today, it seems that an artist's story, their personal narrative, is absolutely crucial to connect with an audience. What brought about this change today?
Well, it's partly the technology, but partly the habits that have grown out of the technology. The business I grew up in was linear. You know, there were only 2 or 3 levers you could pull. You would originate a song, and then you would put it on the radio, you would put it in the stores. If it was after 1982, you would make a video. And that's what you did. And you either had a hit or you didn't. It's just, today there are dozens of touch points. And, where in those days, since it was linear, it was a push business. Today it's a pull business. It's all about the setup of all the dozens of touch points. And then when you release the track, how, where, and when you can build a critical mass with fans first, and then back into the push that comes behind that.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's interesting hearing you talk about that. What would you feel now that you've talked about that aspect of today's business? What do you feel are some of the most important elements in the new music economy for breaking artists, and do they vary, in your opinion, from genre to genre?
I think what varies genre to genre is what's always varied, which is you're speaking to different demographics and psychographics depending on what the song is and who the artist is. That's not that different, but I would say that it's not the vehicles and the tools that we use are not so much different as they are more. There's more of everything. There's more choice. There's more data. There's more information. There's more to learn, more to use, and more to chase in the context of breaking a song.
And do you find that more of a challenge with Hello Group, having all those touch points?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, don't forget, the Hello Group has a lot of moving pieces. We have a huge music component.
Right.
And then this film and TV piece developed in the last 2 years as a result of the music piece coming head on with the pandemic. We were developing a new girls pop band. Like, I was involved with the Go-Go's, I was involved with the Spice Girls. We were about to do the exact same thing, and we were building a reality TV show around it right when the pandemic hit. And Fremantle in London picked up the show. So all of a sudden, we were making a TV show. Then comes the pandemic, and all of our music stuff keeps going, but it moves online. and we start creating more and more scripts. And a year goes by of creating scripts, and we're sitting in the backyard one day, and Taylor says, I'm about to say the craziest thing I've ever said to you. I think we should start a film and TV studio.
Wow.
And we all looked at each other, we burst out laughing, and then we agreed we should do it. And we went out and raised the money a year ago and opened a studio, and we now have 20 active scripts across a lot of different film companies. So that has been complementary to the music side.
Absolutely.
Because they bootstrap one another. And that wasn't what you asked me, but...
No, but it makes sense, yeah, because you have to be, I think, really integrated in a lot of different areas today.
Well, you need a lot of legs on the ground. You know?
Yeah.
A 2-legged table falls over.
Exactly.
We're about a 17-legged table at the moment.
Exactly. Let me ask you, today, what new business models do you see emerging that can help new artists create a context around their music?
I hesitate to call anything a new model at the moment. That's just my terminology because I get stuck on that stuff. I see a lot of activity, and I think that some of the stuff falls through that succeeds. But what's clearly been the difference is an artist today, as opposed to 25 or 30 years ago, an artist today has to get their own juice up to a certain critical mass. They have to get, whether it's whatever it is, whatever the capital du jour is.
Right.
If it's streams, if it's airplay, if it's spins, whatever terminology you're using, whereas the record company at one point listened, sought out, found, signed, created, and then took it from zero out of the gate. That's not what it is anymore. These kids have to show up with some kind of foundation, some kind of base before most of the record companies will even talk to them. And that's the good news and the bad news, but it is the news.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting hearing you talk about that because it has changed the entire, I guess what you'd call criteria of who gets signed and who doesn't, based on exactly what you're saying. So much more is now expected of that new artist, new writer, manager. Whereas you said before, the label, and I remember that having worked in the label business, did so much more of that work.
Well, it's two parts also, Rich. On coming in, you need to have a foundation before you even walk into the record company. And then once the record company takes you on, if there's not a result very fast, you're gone. You get dropped quickly. So, and that's very different than the business we grew up in.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things, Phil, that I see today that the digital revolution has brought is that there's a much longer tail for a lot more music. And I'm curious, in your mind, how has this factor affected an artist's ability to make money with their music?
Well, in the pop business, it's still a 90-10 business, or a 99-1 business, if you will. The big hits do the tonnage, and everything comes behind it. But what the long tail has done, I deal with a lot of legacy artists, I deal with jazz artists, I deal with blues artists. Those are people that in the older music business never really got up to bat. But the fact is that there are communities that live online that seek out those genres and those artists and those songs. So a guy like Arturo Sandoval, who I've worked with for 20 years,
Great artist.
he's got a foundation that could not have existed years ago. Great blues players have the ability to sell music. Then they were never going to get the record company's attention, or the budgets, or the priorities, and now they're the democratization of fan access. And I hate using that word because it's a loaded word, but the truth is that if you're a fan, you have more access to more music now than you ever have. And that has most benefited those genres that have been underserved in the past music industry.
Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Ritch, you're the founder, CEO, legend of Music Business Registry. Tell us what the Music Business Registry is all about.
Well, what it's about, Eric, is it's a company that is designed to provide the most accurate and up-to-date contact information for the music business. So if someone is looking to reach the A&R community, if someone is looking to reach music publishers, if someone needs to reach artist managers, if someone needs to reach music attorneys, if someone's looking to place their music into film and television and needs to reach all the music supervisors, that's the contact information that we provide. We've been doing it for 28 years. We're sort of the industry standard, if you will, for the music business and have been serving them since 1992. So that's what we do.
Amazing. So if I wanted to find out, let's say A&R people from Warner Brothers, let's say, I can just go in there and find that in the A&R registry?
Absolutely. You'll find all of the Warner Brothers in there. You'll find the Warner Brothers in LA, Warner Brothers in New York, Warner Brothers in Nashville, Warner Brothers in London, Warner Brothers, probably in Australia as well. So those are the main territories that we cover.
Amazing. And we're offering all of our insiders right now that are listening, if you visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount off your first order. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. Anything else you want to say, Ritch?
Well, when you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. Thus creating the long tail.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Because of the long tail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Marty Bandier talked about that very factor in terms of making money with publishing on a panel that I did a couple years ago with him, where he talked about how in the old days it was X amount of people being paid by the pool of money that came in from ASCAP BMI publishing. Now, 10 times the money is coming in, but it's going to 600 times more people than ever before. And that's to your point.
It's flattened it out.
Completely.
Absolutely.
Completely.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Phil, how has streaming altered what types of artists can or can't break in today's marketplace?
Look, streaming is fan-driven. So you see the trends are different because trends that are led by fans obviously are trends that are different than trends that are driven by the industry or by the infrastructure. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. At the end of the day, what you want to believe is that the hits get through. And I think to some degree that is the case. The hits mostly get through. But, the truth is we all hear records that get through that are truly not hits and on occasion genuinely awful.
Yeah.
And they get through. But at the end of the day, you hope a hit is a hit. And the golden rule always was hit songs find a way to become hits. And you hope that's still the case.
When you look at long-term marketing plans for a new release, how important to you is tracking or analytics in marketing? Where the audience is coming from, where they're going, what actions can I take? Can you speak to that?
I am not a data specialist, but what I can tell you is that based on what I see and what I hear every day, is that the industry has become much more data-driven than it's ever been. On one hand, I admire that it exists, that it's available, that people access it. On the other hand, at the end of the day, we all grew up in an industry that we felt music. We felt songs. We felt when a record could be a hit. And that had a skill attached to it if you were on our side, and it had a passion attached to it if you were on the fan side. I'm happy they have the data. I never want to see the data overtake the passion.
Okay. Phil, are there any books or films that have really resonated with you professionally speaking that you could recommend to our audience?
As far as our industry is concerned?
Yeah, as far as our industry, we have a lot of beginning artists and, people that are trying to pursue the music industry. So
there've only been not a lot of books, because what I find with books, candidly, I read a lot of the books. I skim through them, but I find that most of the books are written from one vantage point at the table, and I don't believe our industry is driven by any one vantage point. But there are movies that inspire me, and there was a movie that Gil Friesen did years ago called 30 Feet from Stardom.
Yes, the 20 Feet from Stardom,
And I thought that was very inspiring film.
Yes.
And I think any of the, there's a current flood of films Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, being in the first and the biggest of that pack that came through. And any time that you can share with the fans the road a band takes and goes through to get where the fan perceives them to be, people think bands just show up with number one records. They just show up playing to 50,000 people. They just show up. They have no idea how they get from point A to point B. So any documentation that memorializes that growth of a career or of an artist, I always find inspiring, and I hope fans do as well.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you a question about, you touched on this a little before when you spoke about, how we all grew up in a business of a certain way. And that is, do you feel that music can become really important again in our culture?
Well, I personally think music's never become not important. I think that people of our age, the only thing we had was music. We had music and sports, but when we were after school, when we came home, we were playing air guitar in our boxer shorts in our bedroom because we had first AM radio, then FM radio, and then cassettes, and then records, and but it was always about music. My kids all have, countless, they play video games, and they have Xbox, and they have PlayStation. They're in the middle they have 1,000 ways to entertain themselves, but the common thread is they all have music attached to them. So my kids hear music that I grew up with because it's licensed into games and it's licensed into films. So I don't know that music has been replaced. I think that it has to share the stage with a lot of other forms of entertainment. And I don't mind that. I think that's good. I think the record business hit the crapper a lot of years ago. I think the music business has never been bigger.
Phil, what advice can you offer our listeners who are wanting to pursue a career in the business side of the music industry?
Well, there's some real advantage for people who want to be in the business of music today, because when I went to school, there was no music industry program.
Right.
And I went to the Newhouse School in Syracuse, and I went there because they had a film and TV program, but they were a journalism school. Within the first couple of months of being there, I met my two oldest friends, Rob Light and John Sykes, who I spent my entire life with, starting from the first year of college. And two of my dearest friends, or oldest friends. And but today, we founded one of the very first music industry programs with the Bandier program at Syracuse. And there are today a dozen great music industry programs. There's the Ahmet Ertegun School at NYU, there's Northwestern, there's UCLA, USC, Northwestern, Belmont in Nashville.
Belmont, yeah, Berkeley,
great,
yeah.
Really impressive. So one advantage for people who want to get in the industry is they actually can go to school for it, which was not the case in our generation, okay? The other advantage is that because of the data and because of the easy access for fans, I think they can get a lot easier than we ever had access to. We lived in a gated community in our industry up until 20 years ago. The gates are down. Now, that's the good news and the bad news, because, the gates
now
are down. Now
there are no more gates.
There's no more gates.
Right.
And, everybody's in there. So it used to be you had to climb the gate. Now you have to not get trampled when you go through the gate with everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, exactly. No more gates. Phil, what advice can you offer to people who want to pursue a recording career as an artist today? I mean, you work with artists directly. So what would be your advice to someone who wants to pursue a career as an artist today in today's market?
I've given the same advice since I was very, very young about that question. There are artists who sit across from me and I say, why do you want to do this? This is too hard to do. If you don't love it, don't do it. It is too hard. And if the person across from me says, I want to be a star, I want to have the paparazzi at the end of the driveway, and I want to be, famous, I say, you know what? Try something else. This is not for you. This is too hard. But when you're sitting across from somebody who looks you in the eye and they say, you don't understand. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I've got something in me that has to come out, and music is the only way I can express it. To that person, you say, Whatever it takes, however long it is, you stay with it, because it'll get through.
They got to be committed to it as a way of life.
You got to, it's just, it's not something you can explain.
It's something that they have it or they don't. It's that X factor. Yeah. You have to live, breathe it.
They got to, you've got to be a slave to it. You cannot live without it. It is your oxygen. For that person, Quincy Jones used to say, you always had to leave enough room in the studio for God to pass through, because composers or songwriters are divinely inspired. That's what Quincy used to tell me when I was a kid.
Exactly.
And if you believe that, which I do because of him, then you realize being a songwriter is not always a choice. Sometimes it's a mission that you're given.
Calling, yeah.
It's a calling. So to that person, you're not going to dissuade them, and you're not going to talk them out of it. So Godspeed.
Absolutely. Phil, where can people best connect with you and the Hello Group?
Well, we're not hiding. We're easy to find. We're right here in Burbank, and you can come see us, email us, call us, whatever. We're happy to. We're obviously very, very busy, but we're obviously open for everybody to come see us.
Great. Phil, thank you so much. Really appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Really, so great seeing you.
Enjoyed it a lot.
Looking forward to it.
I look forward to have a very good conference.
Absolutely, I am too. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
What a wonderful guy. I have so much respect for Phil. Phil was a promotion man when I first started in this business 42 years ago. He was a promotion guy back east when I worked for A&M. We kind of began our careers at the same time, and I've known his name for so long, and he's had such a spectacular career, and he's one of the most respected executives in the business. He was the president of Virgin Records for 11 years. He was the president of Warner Brothers for 5. He ran EMI North America. He is such an incredible and insightful guy, and now, he's got this new company, which he talked about, which is the Hello Group.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was fascinating, and one of the reasons why I think it's so crucial and it's so exciting that we're getting guests like Phil is because he comes from that old paradigm of the old business, kind of like you, where you came from that old model, but you've been able to adapt and survive and thrive, and certainly Phil has done just that.
Absolutely. And he's now involved with this whole new company, the Hello Group, which is one of the great models of a 21st century entertainment company. Like we always said, like Position Music.
Right.
I mean, it's in that league where they're doing things like, films, and they're doing television shows, and they're doing music and publishing and so on and so forth. And I loved how he talked about the how artists need a viable foundation for their music to get a label's attention or to bring viability to themselves.
Yes.
That's a very important factor that I think artists today who are seeking deals really need to understand, is how they can move that needle for themselves so that they can get their own careers moving forward.
Hey Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show over at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes in our space. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Insider Video Series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. This show would not be here if it weren't for our amazing team, which are the following: interview editors Sarah Nissenbaum and Alex Taylor, show notes and transcriptions by Jani Chang, Nicole Capodoglo, Lilia Owens, and Sarah Nissenbaum, theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast.